He was born to be king, destined for a life of duty and service. She was Catherine Middleton, a commoner whose path crossed with his at the University of St. Andrews. Theirs is a love story known around the world, a modern fairy tale played out under the unrelenting gaze of the public eye. But beyond the tiaras and the titles, beyond the official engagements and the polished portraits, exists a partnership built on something far more profound. It is a story not of grand gestures, but of the quiet, almost imperceptible moments of support, the subtle glances, and the silent strength they draw from one another. It is in these unspoken exchanges that the true depth of their bond is revealed, a bond that would be tested in ways they could never have imagined. From the nervous energy of a newly engaged couple to the devastating diagnosis that would shake their world, the journey of William and Catherine is a testament to the power of love in its most resilient and authentic form. In the early days of their public life together, the world watched a young couple learn to navigate the pressures of royal existence. They were, by their own admission, like ducks on a pond, calm on the surface but paddling furiously underneath. This was never more apparent than during their first official joint interview following their engagement in 2010. Seated beside their interviewer, they were eager to share their happiness, yet the weight of the occasion was palpable. Catherine, in particular, appeared visibly anxious. As she spoke about the excitement and the relief of finally being able to share their news, and a sharp-eyed observer would have noticed a slight tremor in her hand. It was a fleeting moment of vulnerability, a crack in the carefully constructed facade of composure. But what happened next spoke volumes. William, ever attuned to her state of being, did not make a grand spectacle of his concern. Instead, he offered a silent, steadying presence. He gently reached over and placed his hand over hers, his touch a quiet anchor in the storm of her nerves. It was a gesture of solidarity, a wordless promise that they would face this scrutiny together. He later admitted they were both anxious, comparing themselves to ducks, calm on the surface with little feet paddling furiously underneath. For Catherine, the moment was a blend of overwhelming emotion and shyness, a feeling she traced back to her very first meeting with William, when she had scuttled off, feeling very shy. In that simple act of holding her hand, William was not just her fiancé, he was her partner, her protector, grounding her in a moment of intense public pressure and showing the world the foundation of their partnership. As the years passed and they grew into their roles as the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, the subtle choreography of their support for one another became more refined. It was no longer about calming nerves, but about showing quiet pride and respect. A particularly telling instance occurred at an engagement focused on a cause close to Catherine's heart: mental health. She had just delivered a significant speech for the Royal Foundation on World Mental Health Day, and a topic that required personal conviction and public courage. As she concluded her address and made her way back to her seat beside William, the moment was ripe for a public display of approval. A pat on the back or an enthusiastic whisper would have been understandable, perhaps even expected, but William's response was far more nuanced. As Catherine approached, he did not stand or make a fuss. Instead, with a barely noticeable movement, he reached out and subtly pulled her chair out for her, making it easier for her to sit down. It was an act of such quiet thoughtfulness that it could easily have been missed by the cameras. Yet to body language experts and those who study the dynamics of relationships, it was a profound statement. This small gesture was not about him. It was entirely about her. But it acknowledged her moment of higher status and importance without overshadowing it. It was his way of saying, "Well done," without a single word. A silent salute to her achievement that demonstrated perfect synchronicity and empathy. It was a far cry from the performative chivalry of someone who has had chairs pulled out for him his entire life. This was a loving husband performing a simple act of care for a wife he was clearly immensely proud of. Their public appearances have also offered glimpses of a playfulness that exists away from the formalities. At the glittering BAFTA Awards, a setting where they are both in their element, their interactions often carry a hint of private joy. At the 2023 ceremony, while posing for the customary photographs on the red carpet, a moment of spontaneous affection occurred that delighted onlookers. As they stood side by side, Catherine, looking radiant in her gown, gave William a light, playful tap on the bottom. The gesture was so quick, so natural, that it seemed to bypass any royal protocol about public displays of affection. It was a flash of the flirtatious dynamic that exists between a husband and wife, a moment of pure, unguarded fun. William's reaction was one of pleasant surprise, a slight blush creeping onto his face as he registered her cheeky move. Experts suggested the gesture was layered with meaning, a playful reprimand for a missed cue to hold hands, a signal of confidence, and a display of the easy, loving rapport they share when the pressure is off. This lightheartedness was a recurring theme. From a stolen kiss on the hand before stepping out of a car at the Royal Variety performance, to the way Catherine would throw him a grinning glance with one eyebrow playfully raised, leaving William looking slightly bashful and overwhelmed by her radiance. These moments, captured in fleeting seconds, painted a picture of a couple who found joy and humor in their shared journey. Yet, it is often in moments of unexpected challenge that the true character of a partnership is forged. A drizzly day at the Commonwealth Day service in 2022 provided another such window into their unspoken alliance. As the couple arrived at Westminster Abbey, the weather turned, and an aide rushed forward with an umbrella, offering it to Catherine. Politely, she initially declined, continuing her warm interactions with the waiting children and crowds. But William, ever watchful, had other ideas. He stepped forward, took the umbrella from the aide, and with a natural, unassuming movement held it over his wife's head. It was a simple act, but its symbolism was powerful. As a future king, he could have easily delegated such a task. Instead, he chose to personally ensure her comfort, happily lowering his own status to become her supporter in that small moment. There was no posing for the cameras, no preening. It was simply a man looking after his wife, a gesture that spoke of a daily, ingrained habit of care. Body language experts noted the blush of pleasure on William's face as Catherine responded with a glance of loving approval. In that glance was a world of meaning, gratitude, love, and a shared understanding that they were a team, facing everything, even a little rain, together. This quiet, unspoken communication formed the bedrock of their relationship, a foundation that would soon be tested by a storm of unimaginable ferocity. In early 2024, the world they knew was shattered. What began as a planned abdominal surgery for Catherine led to a diagnosis that no family ever wants to hear: cancer. The news came as a huge shock, a brutal and sudden blow that landed just weeks after King Charles had also been diagnosed with the disease. For William, it was like being hit by a bus: sudden, disorienting, and utterly devastating. The man who was to be king, the rock of his family, was plunged into a state of disbelief and heartbreak. One moment, life had been normal. The next, the ground beneath him vanished. He described the feeling to close friends as a rug being pulled, but it was more than that. And it was heartbreak, fear, and helplessness all at once. Yet amidst his own turmoil, his focus remained singular: his wife and his children. With Catherine needing to focus on her recovery and treatment, William became the anchor for their family. He took charge of the school runs for Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. He was there to cook the dinners, to organize the play dates, to ensure that as much as possible, life for their children continued with a sense of normalcy and love. Together, they gathered their 3 young children and delivered the most difficult news a parent can impart: that Mummy was ill but that she would be okay. It was a moment that required a composure neither of them felt, a performance of strength for the sake of their little ones. But the months that followed were a private battle fought behind the closed doors of their Adelaide cottage home. Catherine underwent chemotherapy, a grueling process that took a physical and mental toll. Through it all, William was her constant, unwavering presence. He put his own royal duties on hold to be there for every appointment, to sit with her during the difficult days, and to be a pillar of strength when she felt weak. Friends witnessed the depth of his devotion, describing it as love in its rawest, most powerful form. He was not the Prince of Wales in those moments. He was simply her husband, her caregiver, her best friend. While Catherine bravely decided to share her story with the world in a personal video message, a decision made with William by her side. And believing her experience could help others, William remained in the background, the silent engine keeping the family running. He ensured the children were shielded from the worst of the fear, that their world remained filled with laughter and love. The experience, as brutal as it was, forged their bond even stronger. Royal observers noted that they looked more united today than ever. Their marriage based on friendship, love, and mutual respect having been tested in the fire and emerging unbreakable. The quiet gestures of the past, the held hand, the pulled-out chair, the shared umbrella, were all practice for this, the ultimate act of love. Simply being there, steadfast and true through sickness and in health, until death do them part. And as Catherine emerged from treatment and began to slowly return to public life, the world saw not just a princess, but a woman and her husband who had faced the darkest of times and found their way back to the light together.